Peace and love, man. Welcome to Chronicles of an Old Hippy, Part 2. Left off in 1967. I was 13. I was going to turn 14 in the summer of love, when hippies were starting to be recognized as a real force. But what is a hippie, man? What is it all about? Well, it's a movement that's governed by two things, man. One, freedom of speech. Free speech is very important to the hippie movement. Number two, a philosophy of peace and love, man, where every man is your brother. There is no respect of color or nationality or creed or any other thing, man. We are all people, and like we're all the same, and we love everybody. And that's what being a hippie was all about. There was no political left or right. There was no Democrat or Republican. There was no conservative or liberal. What we were was hippies, man. We were going to talk freely, and we were going to live freely, and we were not going to follow the rules of the establishment. We were not going to listen to the man, and we were not going to be busted up by the pig. The establishment was the established government. The man was the person in charge of the government, whether on a national, state, local level. The pig was the police and the police state, whether it was the local cops, the county sheriff, the state police, or whatever. Man, that was the pig. They were trying to bring us down. Now, a lot of these terms came along as a result of this clashing of the racist creeds and colors. We all began to speak a new language because we brought in one part of a language. The beatnik movement, left over from the late 50s and early 60s, came in, and the black folks came in with their particular way of saying things. And there was northern, and there was southern, and eastern, and western, and all of these things came together, and we started to form this new language that was groovy, man. It was so out of sight. It was just unbelievable, and this language was starting to grow, and more terms came along. But here I am, 14 years old at the time, and people are saying, you were a kid that was wet behind the ears. What did you know? How could you be part of this movement, man? Nobody listens to a 14-year-old kid. Well, that's true. Nobody listens to one kid, but when he gets together with four others, they become a huge fist. And when you got a couple of fists balled up at you, you know you're in a fight. And so as we gathered together and became bigger and bigger fists, which became a sign of our struggle, power to the people, right on, people started to recognize that even though we were young, we had something to say, and it was going to be said by God or by otherwise, and you were going to hear it, man, because we were going to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. If we had to say it in your front yard, in the middle of your downtown, in your city park, or in your 1968 Democratic National Convention. So, like, after the Summer of Love, this hippie movement started to grow, and man, it grew big. It became a voice of people who were sick and tired of being pushed around and put down under the thumb of the man, and we were all going to come together and change this world. Now, there were different views and visions that came into hippie culture, and some of them were really radical, man, and some of them were a little more mellow and relaxed, and so sometimes it got tense. The Black Panther Party wanted to do things a certain way with a lot of violence, and what did they call this one group, the SDS, the Students for a Democratic Society? Not a Democrat society, but a democratic society that was truly of by and for the people, because it was all about the people. And we were going to come together, and we were going to take the power to the people struggle, and the Students for Democratic National, or Students for Democratic Society, and the Black Panther Party, and we were going to push all this together, and we were going to change the programs in the inner cities for the kids, and the food programs for the kids and the elderly, and the housing program for people who didn't have, and it became more and more of a socialist movement. Not communist, but socialist. A lot of people became communists as a result of hearing too much. We were young kids with mushy heads, mushy brains, and open minds. And we were listening to people whoever sounded cool, whoever sounded like a philosopher, whoever sounded educated, whoever sounded knowledgeable. We were listening, and we were sucking it all in, and we were absorbing it all. We were becoming whatever these people taught us to be. A dangerous thing in the right hands. They made us believe that socialism was the most important thing, that if we pushed everything all together and then handed out an even part to everybody, that everyone would live the same way, man. And it sounded so cool. That was a utopia, where everyone lived in peace and love together and had the same thing as the guy next door. There was no rich guy up here and no poor guy down there. We were all just right there, man. And that's what we were looking for. But then, more importantly, came this war in Vietnam, and the fact that we wanted it stopped because we didn't want to graduate from high school and turn right around, and instead of getting to go to college, have to go to a foreign country to kill foreign people for a war we didn't understand. It may be more understandable now, but back then we didn't understand it. We didn't know that when we walked out of Vietnam, 2 million people were going to be slaughtered by a communist government that moved down from North Vietnam and killed everyone in the South that didn't do what they wanted them to do, that didn't believe what they wanted them to believe. We didn't know that. But we were adamant about getting that war stopped, so 57,000 more American soldiers didn't have to go over there and die, and could instead go to college and get an education and become somebody. So, 1968 rolls around. There's this big convention going on in Chicago. Chicago National Democratic Convention. Democratic National Convention. And we saw that as our springboard to be heard. But I'm going to tell you about that in the Chronicles of an Old Hippy Part 3. So for right now, peace and love, man. I'll see you later. Remember to keep the struggle alive.